and DeSantis debating last year, right? I mean, think about it. That's really the two views of the world that are competing for the heart and soul of America right now. The two views and value systems competing for the future of America are best displayed in DeSantis and Newsom. I mean, I know Trump's the national figure and will be the leader on the federal level and nationally to try to bring us back to sanity. But if you want to look at the application of the right policies versus the application of the wrong policies, it's best done at the state level, not even the federal level, because at the federal level it gets so muddy and I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. The state examples are the best way to look at which policies work. Do you want to support biblical values such as limited government, defined jurisdictions for government? That's a biblical idea. Government's a God-created institution. Individual liberties, another God-created idea detailed throughout the Bible of the individual rights and responsibilities of the person, the human being that is the individual, not just the corporate body or the identity politics of whichever group you fit into based on your sex organs or your color of your skin or whatever the left tries to define next. So those individual liberties, as defined by the Bible and not by these leftist policies. So you got limited government, individual liberties, free enterprise. That's a biblical idea of competition, of letting the employer and the employee negotiate their payments and their terms and all those things. Jesus has a whole parable on this, rather than the government interjecting in the absurd ways that it does right now at the federal and state level. So limited government, individual liberties, free enterprise, and then timeless truths, the timeless laws of nature and nature's God that he put into place, that he designed for us. And when we line up with them, we get blessings. When we go against them, we get curses. We call that the lift principles. And when you have a governor, a state, even a local entity, a city council that follows those things, that actually implements policies lined up with the laws of nature and nature's God, then when a natural disaster hits, you mitigate it. It has the least amount of damage to the community. And even better, you rally around each other to serve each other and to help and to rebuild from that thing. Whenever you have a state or a city council or whatever that's built on the opposite of the laws of nature and nature's God, when they don't believe in limited government, they actually believe government should solve all your problems, then you end up with government not solving any of your problems and actually creating problems just like this out-of-control fire that they're unable to deal with because of their bad policies. So that opposite of limited government creates more problems than if there was no government at all. And then, of course, they don't believe in individual liberties. They believe you don't have the right to believe like you want to believe. You have to believe like us. If you do not support our DEI racist policies, if you do not support all of our radical environmental worship policies, then you will be jailed, you will be silenced, you will be kicked out, you will be whatever they come up with next. They've done all those things to anybody that disagrees with them. So individual liberty is not even on their radar. And then free enterprise. No way, man. These people don't believe in the market. They don't believe in the individual transactional policies that create a better community and a better economy. They think that it should be top down, that they should control. They should set the prices. They should tell you have to buy certain things, that they tell you certain things have to exist and product features and those kind of things. All the control they can get. And then, of course, they don't believe in timeless truths because they don't believe in truth. They believe it's whatever you want it to be. So it's two different worldviews, and it could not be better represented than Florida versus California right now. Texas, I wish, could be the one that I would say is the best representation of the lift principles and the biblical principles of liberty, but unfortunately Florida's doing a better job because of the leadership of Ron DeSantis and many of the legislators that are also strong in these things. And then, of course, California is the best representation of the opposite of those things. So there you have it, folks. I mean, it's almost a blessing in disguise. All of this pain, a result of all of the bad policies, puts this on display not just for California, not just for Los Angeles, but for the whole nation and the world. I mean, look at the world debate on these two worldviews and policies. Look at what's happening in Argentina, because you have a guy that comes in that believes in the very things I just described and is pushing for those policies and absolutely decimating the government controls that used to be there, and they're already getting the benefit of those policy changes. You look at these places that are saying we're done with the pain. I mean, Europe right now is going through a real fire, pun intended, they are beginning to realize the pain of all of these policies. And so you have, the Italian prime minister, and you have the battles going on in France, and you have, the UK right now and what's happening with them. I mean, all of this is a clash of worldviews coming to a head at essentially the same time everywhere in the world. And it was honestly touch and go, where the global communist revolution almost won, and in all of those places I just mentioned, and in the United States. And yet, at nearly the same time, I mean, within a 12-month period, you have people getting elected that represent the biblical principles of liberty, the lift principles, in many of these places, and coming in with total, momentum and a massive agenda, and moving quickly. And I'm praying that America is going to lead the way on that. We're going to surpass Argentina and El Salvador and all these places where these things are happening. If Donald Trump really does hit the ground running in less than 2 weeks, he's already running, man. What am I talking about? He's already on the ground. But once he actually has the power to nominate these people to take over these agencies and all of that, you may see the greatest restoration of limited government, individual liberties, free enterprise, and timeless truths that we've ever seen in history. So the pain is real, but from that pain, what will we do to learn and do better at the policies to mitigate that pain in the future? Stay with me. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core.
God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Psalm 46 is a popular psalm, as it includes the text, "Be still and know that I am God." This was the conclusion to a psalm that previously observed, "Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling." This described what looked like the end of the world. Nevertheless, the psalmist remained unshaken. He refused to allow present difficulty to cause him to forget God's past faithfulness. Virus or no virus, God is our refuge and strength.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
Can you be gay and Christian? What if you genuinely feel like you're trapped in the wrong body? Did God make you this way? Is change even possible?
Dr. Michael Brown.
Countless people ask me these very same questions, some of them quite desperate, many of them in tears.
Would you be ready to give a godly answer?
Each one represents a person or family member or loved one who's struggling deeply with their core identity.
Satan wants to deceive and destroy God's truth.
So we know that what this gay-affirming agenda within the church is doing is it's fragmenting Scripture, it's dumbing down the Bible.
And infiltrate the church with his lies. In his image, clearly and compassionately presents God's truth through Bible teaching, science, and the testimonies of those who know both sides.
My dad walked in the door and he said, "Denise, I want to talk with you." And the first words out of his mouth were, "I want to become a woman."
Watch it on AFA Stream. Stream.afa.net. Stream.afa.net.
Hello, everyone. Tim Wildmon here with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, our tours for 2025, our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg and Boston, they're filling up. They're halfway full now. And we've never had a response quite like this. So what I'm saying is, if you want to go with us this year to either Colonial Williamsburg, which includes Jamestown and Yorktown, or Washington, D.C. and all the sites of our nation's capital, including Mount Vernon, or if you want to go with us to Boston and see the Freedom Trail and all the sites of the greater Boston area. If you want to go on these trips with us this year, it's time to check into the information and register so that you make sure you're on one of our tours, the one you want to go on, obviously. So go to the website wildmongroup.com. WILDMON group.com. Hope to see you on one of these in 2025.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with me. Rick Green here, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. Phone number, if you want to call in today, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. First segment talking about the fires in California, of course. That is the hot news item of the day. Tragedy, absolutely horrible, absolutely not completely preventable, but the level of damage, 100%, these policies of these leftists and the environmental wackos, as Rush used to call them, and I think is the accurate term, just the foolishness is causing tremendous pain, and hopefully will wake up a lot of people to say we don't want the pain anymore. There's got to be a better way, and of course there absolutely is a better way. 888-589-8840 is the phone number. One other thing I wanted to comment on before I get to the phones is Jimmy Carter funeral underway and doing all the ceremony in Washington, D.C. I think here, again, we need to learn from history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Carter was, a nice man, a Christian, outspoken on his faith, but absolutely a terrible president, and probably the worst president in history through his presidency. And then Obama, of course, surpassed him by miles, and then Joe Biden just created a whole nother scale and a whole nother measurement of how bad of a leader a great nation could actually have, and how quickly a great nation could fall. And hopefully we're rising again. But to the Jimmy Carter thing, and I think I don't think there's anything rude about analyzing a person's life at the end of their life. I don't know. I've never been a big fan of preachers getting up and only saying nice things about somebody at the funeral. Let's learn from their good, the bad, and the ugly, right? All of it. And especially if somebody's a total scumbag, why don't you get up and talk about how nice they were or how good they were or whatever, if they weren't. Anyway, okay, I may be a little too cynical, but my point on Jimmy Carter is this. Very much like the fires in California, you have to learn from the pain. And Jimmy Carter created a ton of pain because of his bad policies. And it wasn't just Carter. He was building on Ford's bad policies. So it's not just a Democrat thing. Gerald Ford had horrible economic policies, and they tried all that whip inflation now stuff and price controls and government. It was all about government's going to solve your problems. Instead of government, get out of the way. That's why Reagan did such a great job when he came along. He said government is the problem. He said that in his first inaugural address. He said government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. It's creating the problem. Just like with these fires, bad government policy created a bad result that more people had to experience the pain of those bad policies. And same thing with Jimmy Carter's presidency. I mean, he created a negativity and a pessimism in America. And his economic policies were so bad that he himself called it the malaise, and actually said America's best days were behind us. Yeah, imagine saying that to your country. Hey guys, it's been good, but it's going downhill from here. It was bad, man. It was really bad. But the only reason I brought this up is because we need to learn from these things. We need to learn from history, and it occurred to me the other night when I was recording some radio with Tim and David Barton, and Tim was describing Jimmy Carter, the person, and he was talking about his faith and how he was a nice guy and everybody liked him, but that his policies were terrible. And it occurred to me that Jimmy Carter was the first American president that fell into this Christian nicism, this idea that being a good Christian means that you just constantly turn the other cheek, you let people bully you, and that you don't say anything's wrong because that's not nice. You don't convict and exhort and speak truth if it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. He was really the first American president to fall into that category, and it created horrible policies. He was absolutely bullied by Iran and the rest of the world, and allowed it to happen. And instead of being somebody that would stand for truth and be an adult in the room and stand up to the bullies, he bought the lie. He bought the what I believe is from the pit of hell satanic lie that if you're a good Christian, you don't say anything that might hurt somebody's feelings. You're just nice all the time, and in some fantasy world that will cause people to come to Christ. It's an absolute lie. It's this seeker friendly mindset of if we're just nice to everybody, they'll be so blown away by our niceness that when they hit rock bottom, we're the ones they'll come to and they'll want to know Christ. Now, I'm sure there's some people that fit that description right there. That's happened to some people. But that is not the gospel that Jesus preached. That is not the conviction of, here's where you're going wrong. Let me save you from the pain. But to do that, you got to admit that you're a wretched sinner. I'm wretched, folks. I am wretched. And without Christ, my life would be a complete disaster. We should be saying to people, what you're doing doesn't work, and it's going to create more pain. Let me show you a path that can save you from the pain. But Jimmy Carter fit into that category of people that was, I might believe that there's a better way, but, it might hurt somebody's feelings if I tell them that. Well, if you put the guy in the White House with that kind of attitude, with this Christian narcissism, see what I did there? Instead of Christian nationalism, it's Christian narcissism. I made that up just now. I don't know. We'll see if it catches on. Anyway, if you put somebody in the White House that is a member of the Christian narcissism cult, then they're going to be a lousy president, because you can't do that as president. If you're president, you have to, get this, you have to kill people. Yeah, you have to send your military in to actually kill people to keep them from killing our people. That's like part of the job as commander-in-chief. It's war. It's the government does not bear the sword in vain. What do you think the Bible's talking about when it says the government doesn't bear the sword in vain? It means, what do you use a sword for? It's not just a decorative thing you hang on the wall because you went to a men's retreat and everybody held hands and sang Kumbaya. A sword is used to actually kill people. So if you have a president that is embarrassed by America's might and her strength and her absolute success way beyond what the rest of the world has had, a la Barack Obama and Joe Biden. So if you have those kind of presidents that are, now they feel like the sword's actually supposed to be used to bring America down, to actually bring us down to the level of the rest of the country so that they don't feel bad for not being as successful as us, and we don't become arrogant for being better than everybody else. So this is what happens with Christian narcissism. And Jimmy Carter exemplified that. And thankfully, the pain of Jimmy Carter's policies was so bad. I mean, let's just think back. I know I was just a kid, but I did a whole video on this and documentary on Reagan's policies and how he turned this around. But you think back to you put yourself in 1979, 1980, and don't forget your math or or your calendar. For all of 1980, Jimmy Carter's president. Ronald Reagan doesn't come along until January of 81. So we think of the 80s, well, that means Reagan was president the whole time. Well, no, so 79 and 80 is when it got really, really bad. And the Iranian hostages for over 400 days, and America just inept and incapable because of the leadership, because of the decisions. Jimmy Carter sent over fighter jets that were unarmed to try to show force but not actually use force. I mean, what kind of fool would do that? So anyway, this guy and his narcissism gets us to the point, you think back 79, 80, interest rates and inflation, and combined, it became known as the misery index. We had to create a misery index because Jimmy Carter's policies were so incredibly bad. And as a result of that, I think it was 22? I forget the number. It was over 20%. When you combine the inflation and the interest rates. Interest rates alone what'd they get to? They got to in the teens. It was bad, folks. And people did start thinking America's done. Not Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan came back in with from the 76 campaign where he tried to warn us even against Ford. Remember, he ran against Ford in the primary because of these economic policies of whip inflation now and all these things that were not conservative, even though Ford was a Republican. Well, Reagan comes back in 1980 and runs against Carter, pointing out that the pain that you're feeling is from these bad policies. We can change that. We can get rid of the pain, and we can get back to the good stuff. It's what I say in my Constitution classes all over the country. Garbage in, garbage out. Good stuff in, good stuff out. If you put good policies in place, you get good outcomes. Now, sometimes it takes time. With Ronald Reagan, I mean, he gets in January 81, does the tax cuts, brings the good economic policy in. It takes 2 years. I talked about this last week. It takes 2 years. Or maybe it was Tuesday. Anyway, it takes 2 years for Ronald Reagan's policies to finally start gaining steam and the economy to start turning around, and then it led to the greatest peacetime economic expansion in history. That was the difference between the Carter policies and the Reagan policies. And that's what I was trying to point out in the first segment, is the difference between the Newsom policies and the DeSantis policies. It really does matter. Anytime you look out there and you see bad results, if the economy's bad, if the unemployment's bad, if the tyranny from the Department of Justice is bad, anytime you see bad results, you just got to back up in the process and say, okay, where did those bad results come from? What's the cause for the effect? What's causing the bad results? And every single time you back up to bad policies. Bad policies create bad results. Now, where do you get bad policies? From bad politicians. When you get politicians putting in bad policies, that gets you the bad results, the pain that we feel in our pocketbook and our families and our churches and our communities and all of that. So the bad results come from bad policies, which come from bad politicians. But where did the bad politicians come from? From our voting. So we, the people, are the ones that put them in office and allow them to make those bad decisions. So how do you change the bad results? You got to change the bad policies to good policies. How do you get bad policies into good policies? You got to change the bad politicians to good patriots. You got to get rid of the politicians and get patriots. And how do you do that? We, the people, have to be electing them. But I said this back in 2009, actually, and I used to do a presentation around the country called Saving America Begins With You. Yeah, we didn't start in 2020, folks. 2009, I'm doing this presentation called Saving America Begins With You. And I explained this. I talked about bad policies coming from bad politicians. I'm sorry, from bad policies come from bad policies, which come from bad politicians, which come from us electing them. And I said, it's not enough to just show up in November and vote. The reason Donald Trump won the election by a landslide was not just because people showed up to vote in November. It was because for 4 years prior to that election, we got into the mixing bowl of what produces the options in November and gets people out to vote. In other words, we did the things necessary, tilling the ground, planting the seeds, watering the seeds, doing the hard work for 4 years, not 30 days before the election in November. For 4 years before the election in November, we were educating people on what are the good policies that will produce good results. What are the types of elected public servants that would go for those kind of policies that would then give us the good results. So in other words, we were educating people. That's why we did biblical citizenship. That's why we had over 1 million people go through that. And then we were training them on how to go out and teach those things and speak those things. So you got to train people to be articulate and win the day. It's all about getting into the mixing bowl that is going to produce the results for everybody else to vote on in November. So I say all that to say, you look at California versus Florida. You look at Carter versus Reagan. You look at Biden versus Trump. It all represents the two worldviews that continually clash in a culture, and that it's coming to a head all around the world right now. Which worldview is going to win? We now have the advantage. We've been on defense, back on our heels for the last 30 years. And all of a sudden, now we're moving forward and we're on offense. What are we going to do with it in 2025? I know I'm saying the same thing I said 2 weeks ago and last week, but I'm going to beat this mantra for the next 12 months. What are you doing to gain ground in your community so that you don't have to deal with the pain the people in California are having to deal with right now? What are you going to do to rebuild liberty? That's what we're going to be doing in 2025, rebuilding liberty. And we're going to do it all, maybe from now on, but very concentrated between now and July 4th, 2026, because it's the 250th birthday. So we have a perfect opportunity to rebuild liberty and talk about what made America great in the first place. Okay, I'm going to be going to break in just a couple of minutes, but let's still try to get to the phones, and then we'll spend the rest of our time hopefully taking phone calls. Let's start with Michael in Florida, since I'm comparing Florida to California. Michael, what part of Florida are you in, man?
Tampa Bay.
All right. I'm headed pretty close to there for a Constitution conference in a couple of weeks, January 31st and February 1st. I'll talk about it later maybe. Anyway, go ahead, man. What's your comment, question, or whatever you got?
Well, go Florida, go.
Yeah.
I heard a statement a long time ago that when the pain of where you're going exceeds the pain of where you're at, change will occur. And I like the fact that you're pointing out, everybody's kind of kissing the ring of Carter, and I really don't care who it is, because we all have a good side and a dark side. And people tell me, I hear this all the time. Well, you're a good person. You're a good person. Listen, you've never been inside my mind. And I tell you what, that's contrary to the Bible, because the Bible says that there is not one good, no, not even one.
That's right.
And so I just wanted to say, and I have told pastors and preachers to their face, okay, literally, do not pamper me past the pearly gates. And I hope I'm not breaking any rules here, but if you're not scaring the hell out of me, literally, you're not doing your job as a pastor.
Yeah, I used to say close to the same thing. I'd say, you don't go to church for the feelsies. You should be convicted by that sermon, right? I mean, what other thing because we all have things we still need to work on. I don't care how long you've been a believer. And if the pastor's not, causing you some conviction to change things, then man, we're not doing the gospel. We're not doing exactly what it's meant to do. And I, this softness, niceness has prevented that. That's why, Ray Comfort talks about this, false converts in the church, where we have this mamsy-pamsy gospel, and at best it's a turn or burn thing. We're just going to save you from a future pain of being in hell. Get down here and fill out the card and you're done. And we don't actually change anything now. And it's false converts. And anyway, I think you're right, man. I mean, it's got to the niciness has got to go, and it doesn't mean we got to be rude all the time. You don't have to be, you can do it in love, but it's got to be strong, man. It's got to be strong. That's what I think we're seeing in a lot of our new elected officials and public servants, and in a lot of our pastors. They're finding that lion part of our Savior, not just a lamb, but the lion part as well. Quick break, folks. We'll be back. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Do you want to prepare for God's calling on your life to ministry? Many people have a sense that God is calling them to ministry, but they don't know the next step to take. Here's a step that may be for you. Wesley Biblical Seminary offers a new Bachelor of Arts in Christian Ministry that's entirely online, and it will prepare you for whatever ministry God calls you to next. We want to equip you with knowledge and tools you need to confidently fulfill the calling that God has put on your life. Learn more at wbs.edu. That's wbs.edu.
So right now may be the perfect time for you to rethink how you pay for health care. And here's why. This time of year is decision time for a lot of people, but it's also when you can join MediShare and save even more than usual. For many families, joining MediShare means saving about $500 a month, which is a game changer for a lot of people, obviously. But what's more, MediShare members like it a lot. Their satisfaction rate is 98%. Imagine that. And MediShare is a proven thing, too, for over 30 years. It's a Christian community of hundreds of thousands of people now. And here's the thing. If you join before January 15th and you use the promo code SHARE, they'll waive your application fee. So you save even more right off the bat. I'll give you the number here in a second, but just call and you'll get a price within 2 minutes. And again, the deadline is January 15th. So call now and you'll save even more. Here's the number, 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE, 833-44-BIBLE.
We have to know what we're looking for in a judicial nominee.
According to Philip Jaregi, choosing a federal judge nominee is more important than people may realize.
Supreme Court justices under the Constitution, they serve, the Constitution says, during good behavior. Well, that really means life.
The stakes are high, and failure can be devastating.
We've gotten it wrong about 50% of the time with Supreme Court nominees. Had we gotten it just 75% of the time correct, we wouldn't be in the position we're in today.
Federal judges have the ability to change the direction of our nation, for better or for worse. That's why we need to understand the role judges play. What's their purpose? What are the guiding principles that shape who they are and how they use their authority? Learn about that and more with the AFA Cultural Institute DVD, Principles of a Constitutional Judge with Philip Jaragi. It's available now at resources.afa.net. resources.afa.net.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach, talking about the clash of worldviews that we see on display with what's going on in California right now with fires compared to how Florida deals with natural disasters. And then, of course, Carter being laid to rest and the difference between a Carter and a Reagan. And, of course, we're seeing right now the difference between a Biden and a Trump. So there's a difference in worldviews. And leadership matters. And this whole process of you and me, us doing our part to make sure that we're choosing leaders based on that worldview, not just who sounds the best, looks the best, makes us feel good, all that kind of stuff. What are the policies? What are the policies? Because the bad results always come from the bad policies, and the bad policies come from the bad politicians. And we want to replace those politicians with patriots who give us good policies, and that gives us good results. And to do that, it takes more than just showing up to vote. You got to get in the mixing bowl of the candidates and the education and all the things that it takes to make sure you get a good result in a November election that then gives you the good policy and the good results after that. And actually, the elections, obviously, you're informed listeners. You listen to At the Core, you already know this, but it's not just the election. It's after that, right? It's right now, the transition and the pressure on the senators to make sure that the right people get approved to go into the agencies. And then it's the legislation. And every time one of these big pieces of legislation comes through, we're going to have to put the pressure on the congressmen and the senators to get it passed. And in our state legislatures, it's ongoing, folks. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Now, that shouldn't scare you or wear you out or make you go, oh, it's just too much work. No, it should absolutely excite you and motivate you to know that you do have an impact, that you get to play a role. Quoting from Dead Poet Society, that's probably never happened here, but that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. I mean, what a blessing to get to live in a country where you're not stuck having to deal with a tyrant your whole life and pass that to your kids and you never got to actually influence who your leader was. Oh, that'd be terrible. You live in a nation where you get to choose your leaders. What an incredible, incredible blessing. All right, let's go back to the phones. If you would like to join us today, it's 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's head to Pennsylvania, I think, if I got that right. Paul in Pennsylvania. Sounds like a show. Paul in Pennsylvania. Paul in Pennsylvania with you now. Hey, Paul, go ahead, man.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. What part of PA you in?
Somerset County, lots of snow.
Oh, man, believe it or not, I'm sitting here in Texas, freezing right now because my studio is not, the heater's not working. And it's about to snow. It's actually kind of icy right now. Anyway, go ahead, man. You're used to it.
Okay,
I'm not. I don't like cold. I live in Texas because I like it hot.
I got a good one for you.
Go for it.
When Carter was elected, he went to Pat Robertson of the 700 Club, and he said, I understand there's a lot of born-again Christians in government. Could you get me a list? And Pat thought he wanted to know who his allies were, so he got him a list. Carter took that list of 400 godly men in high-level positions and asked for the resignation because you cannot be a good government worker and a good Christian. Wow. And by his own standard, he should have resigned.
I never heard about
400 godly men left the government and got filled. Their places were taken by the rot that we have today.
No kidding, man. And the exact opposite needs to happen, right? We need more people in government.
My wife's father was one of those that got axed.
No kidding. Never heard about that. Paul, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's and there again, it's faulty worldview, and it's the Christian narcissism. It's the idea that you can't be a good Christian and be in government. Wait, what? You can't be good in government without being a Christian, I would argue, because Christian principles are what make good government, at least for our system of free government. If you want a good totalitarian state, then you probably shouldn't be a Christian, and you couldn't be a Christian and have a good totalitarian state. So I know there's no such thing as a good totalitarian state, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, if you want good freedom, if you want a nation that's a constitutional republic to work well, then you got to have Christians in that government, because constitutional republic concept, the whole foundational principles of our Constitution and our Declaration are Christian concepts. So you need people that actually understand that and believe that and will fight for that. What a shame, man. What a shame. Wow. Never heard that story before. All right. 888-589-8840 is the phone number. 888-589-8840. 88840. Call in and join us here on At the Core. Lynn in Arkansas is up next. How about them Hogs beating the Texas Tech Red Raiders? That was a pretty impressive game. Anyway, Lynn, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a couple things, and I'm going to try to be brief, but they're really important.
Go for it.
One of them is I have a copy of Governor Newsom's recall letter to the Californians. A friend of mine lives there, and I asked her to send me a copy. And just one little quote from the governor. He said, "Warning, this unwarranted recall effort will cost California taxpayers $81 million. It is being pushed by political extremists supporting President Trump's hateful attacks on California." Anyway, it goes on with a lot of lies and everything. But then they sent her money. It says California's making a comeback. I believe, hold on just a second.
Well,
anyway,
if he's moving his mouth, he's lying. If he's writing with his pen, he's lying. That's just Gavin Newsom, right? I mean, he's been one of those guys from the time he was mayor of San Francisco. Well, probably before that, of course. But, I mean, he's always been willing to lie through his teeth. You watch him on television, and you just wonder, how evil does a person have to be to have no regard for the truth? None. And be able to smile like he does as he's doing that. Anyway, go ahead, Lynn. I'm sorry. What was your other point?
It says 2 and 3 Californian families are receiving at least $600 in direct relief. Anyway, it goes on. But she got money, and she's doing very well, and a single older woman. But anyway, so he sent that with this deal, trying to talk people out of, voting for the recall.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you about, because we're talking about the fire and waters and everything, water systems in cities, I was already wondering about this because in Fayetteville, they have a thing about stormwater management and water quality funding. And what they're doing now is assessing an extra fee on people's water bill for stormwater management. But I went to the city council meeting, which I'd never been to one before, and I wanted to know if you could give us tips or a website or anything about how to deal with city councils, because, number one, I went by myself. And I mentioned it to other people, and nobody was that interested. And, you really need other people because people's rents are going to go up because of this. It's not that much, but here's how they figure it. They figure it on your permeable.
Well, it's bad policy all the way around. Let me address this because this is a hot topic for me right now. I'm salty about this, pun intended on that, because of the land control that the Marxists have managed to create at the local level through these city councils and county commissions. And Lynn, let me first answer I'm going to come back to that. So let me first answer your question about going to testify. I really want to encourage you, Lynn, check out patriotacademy.com and click on Patriot Experience. I would love for you to come to Fredericksburg, Texas, and do the Patriot Experience, where we train you how to testify in front of these government entities as you're doing it and as you're experiencing a legislative simulation. So we put you in the seat as a legislator. You learn how to get bills out of committee, get them on the floor, how do you win, how do all of those things, but you're also learning how to testify back home to your school board, city council, county commissioner, state legislature, whatever it might be, and learning how to run for office if you decide you want to do that. You learn the Constitution. You learn communication skills. It's an amazing 3 days. It's everything we've ever done at Patriot Academy crammed into 3 days, and I would love for you to come. And to anyone else out there that wants to do what Lynn's talking about, where you take on these fights locally. Okay, now to this water issue. It is such a sham, a complete scam that the government has bought in, been selling to the American people that they bought into for years and years and years. Water has always been an issue, and the market decides better what to do with the water and how to get more water than government ever will. And so if you let the market decide, where if a neighborhood's going in and they can't provide water to the people that are buying houses there, nobody's going to buy the house. And if the neighborhood runs out of water, the people are going to have to come together and find a way to get surface water piped in. I deal with this where I live in Texas on the aquifer issue. Everybody's always claiming the aquifer is going to go dry and we've got too many straws in the cup, and so we got to create all these government entities to take away the individual right to property rights to what we call the right of capture, being able to, whether you're capturing that water from the aquifer underneath your land, just like you would oil or anything else, or you're capturing it on your roof. If you're using the rainwater collection and all that, the things they're doing now to regulate that, and I'm dealing with this with the Patriot Academy campus and the absurd requirements of the local governments here for us to do anything with our campus. And Lynn, what they're going to do to you guys is they're going to add more and more regulation, more and more tax, more and more control over the water, and the end result is exactly what's happening in Los Angeles right now. When government controls it, then nobody really controls it. It's kind of that socialist idea, right? If everybody owns the park, nobody owns the park, and it ends up not really being taken care of. When you own property, you take care of it because you care about it. You're the one that lives with it. When you put in a house or you're going to build for your family, and you're going to put in a good septic, you're going to make sure the engineering's done right because you want the poop to roll downhill. You want everything to be taken care of. It's so insane, this idea that government's going to save us from ourselves. And people vote for this nonsense because they bought the lie. Oh, my neighbor might put something in on their property that might, do this to me or that to me, and so I need government to stop that from happening. No, you don't. You need to, if they do something that harms your property, then you sue them. There are civil remedies for taking, righting the wrongs of somebody harming your property. And I know I'm ranting right now, and it may be confusing to everybody out there because I'm covering so many different things, but what happens is you end up with, once in a blue moon, somebody puts in a whole bunch of trailers on a trailer park or whatever, and they don't do it right, and there's whatever problems with the septics and everything else, and when that happens, they extrapolate that out to say that everybody's going to do that. And so then even in the area where I'm living, which is a nice area, and everybody's responsible with their land, and they take care of things, and they want their stuff to work well. I mean, I'm building a campus where people are coming from all over the country. Of course I'm going to make sure that the septic system works and all of those things. But no, government's got to come in and micromanage it and take months and months and months and make me spend hundreds of thousands of dollars that I shouldn't have to spend to do the things that I'm doing. And whether it's the land control and what they tell you can do with your water, or it's them in the systems that they're creating for public water supplies and the outrageous over regulation that they do on those things, government fails at these things every single time. Now, let me finish that thought by saying this. It doesn't mean that government has no role. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't have fire hydrants and government instituted plans and policies for how to deal with mass disasters or how to deal with fires or all that. Absolutely you should. What I'm saying is that you don't use that to take away property rights and prevent the individual from having their freedom to do what they want with the water that's on their property, or that they can capture from the ground, or that they can capture on their roof. That should be entirely up to that landowner. Who owns the land? The individual or the government? Who owns the land? Your mayor or you? And the problem with giving the power to these county commissioners or these mayors or the state legislature or whoever is that they never do it right. Why? Because it's not theirs. Because they're taking your land, your water, your property, and they're telling you what to do with it. They don't care if it works. They're not going to make sure that it ultimately ends up working well. And even if they try to do that, they'll be like Jimmy Carter. He was such a control freak that they say that he controlled the schedule for who could play tennis at the White House. And of course you can't do all of that and do it well. These control freaks, these do-gooders, these I'm going to solve your problem, I'm going to save you from yourself people, all they do is end up creating more pain. All they do is end up messing up what you would have done a better job. Let's go back to the worldview differences. The Ronald Reagan worldview is a founding father's worldview of belief in the market, the chaos of the market. Hundreds of thousands of people, or in our case now 350 million people nearly, making individual decisions about what's best for them and providing goods and services that would be best for their customer. That produces the best result. When you leave it up to this little cabal of the Politburo and the, or in our case, city councils or county commissioners groups, if you give them the power to make the decisions and you rest all the decision-making power in the hands of these few, or even worse, they hand it over to a bunch of bureaucrats that are nameless, faceless control freaks that love writing regulations for everything in your house or in your restaurant or whatever it might be. If you do that, it's going to fail in the end, and you're going to end up with the disasters like what you're watching in California right now. You're going to end up with people not building houses or developments or neighborhoods or restaurants or anything else because they just get sick of all the nightmares and because it becomes impossible to make a buck. So all of that today to say, you can go with the principles of liberty, limited government, individual liberties, free enterprise, and timeless truths, or you can go with the Soviet-style, communist, Marxist control freaks, and the results are very, very different. You can put garbage in, and you're going to get garbage out. Or you can put the good stuff in, put the biblical principles of liberty in, and you're going to get the good stuff out on the other end of that equation when you do it right. If you want to know how to do that, go to patriotacademy.com. Come down and spend a week with us for the Patriot Experience, and then take that back home and be a catalyst for a restoration of these biblical principles, these biblical values, these constitutional principles that made our nation great in the first place. You can be the champion in your neighborhood, your community. Be like Lynn and go speak. And come with Lynn and learn how to do it well and influence your government, maybe even run for office. All right, folks, have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.